Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We will get you the top stories from India and the region. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, and for the latest on the Israel-Gaza conflict, I'm joined by my colleague Amritpal Singh in West Bank, that's Palestine. Amrit, good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing well, Shubhendu. Over the next half hour, we'll be telling you what all is transpiring here in Palestine, both in the Gaza Strip and in West Bank, where I am standing in the Palestinian territory. But first up to you, Shubhendu, for the headlines.
Israel conducts targeted raids in central Gaza. More trucks carrying aid expected to enter Gaza as basic services like food and medicine are running out.
Are crumbling. Medicine is running out. Food and water are running out.
United Nations General Assembly expected to vote on Gaza war. As an observer at UNGA, Palestine will not have a say. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says India is moving towards assuming leadership in 6G, inaugurates India Mobile Congress 2023. And India jumps to the 6th position in medals tally at the Asian Para Games in China, bags 99 medals with 25 goals. As the conflict between Israel and Hamas enters 21st day, rocket sirens were heard throughout southern Israel in the early afternoon on Friday. An Israeli medic said 3 people had been injured when a missile hit an apartment building in Tel Aviv. Palestinian militants clashed with Israeli troops in at least 2 areas in Gaza Strip in the latest ground operation by Israeli forces. Residents of central Gaza also reported to have heard gunshots along the border. And targeted raids by Israeli forces continue in Gaza even as the conflict enters day 21. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh joins us from West Bank, that's Palestine, to get us more on this and other developments on the conflict. Amrit, over to you, especially given the location. What is the spillover effect of the conflict in West Bank?
Very quickly, Shubhendu, thank you. If I can tell you about the location, I'm standing in West Bank. This is the famed or the infamous separation wall. This is the wall which separates West Bank, and it's a similar wall in the Gaza Strip from Israel. What Israel's done is it's built a wall around Palestine, and that is why the Palestinians cry that we live in an open-air prison. Beyond this wall is Israel. If I can ask my cameraman to give you telltale signs of what is the spillover that you asked me in West Bank, though most of the pounding is going on or targeted attacks going on in Gaza. But this is what West Bank looks like. Over 100 people are 110 people already dead. There were 2 refugee camps attacked here, Shams Noor and Jamim refugee camp. Over 100 people dead, 2,000 injured, 700 arrested. So that's what West Bank looks like, Shubhendu. And to look at what the situation is, I filed this ground report. It's day 21 of the Israel-Hamas war. As the war completes 3 weeks and is poised to enter into its 4th week, the war is intensifying by the minute. Last night, for the 2nd consecutive day, the Israeli Defense Forces entered Gaza Strip in the central part of Gaza Strip, what is being called as a localized raid. Small units went in, backed by fighter jets of Israel and UAVs and drones. They are saying these are localized raids to weaken Hamas, to target the specific information they have about their depots, about their military bases. But they say this is also preparation for the next phase, which is a complete ground assault by the Israeli forces, who have been amassed in huge numbers, along with tanks, artillery guns, heavy military equipment along the Gaza Strip. The question is, when will that happen and what will be its fallout? The clear answer is the civilian casualties will see a steep climb, and that is perhaps what's weighing on Benjamin Netanyahu's mind as international pressure continues to build to see that the civilian casualties, which Israel says are mere collateral damage, are brought to the minimum. But in all this, a small glimmer of hope is that despite the bombings, despite the Hamas retaliating, the humanitarian aid which has been going into the Gaza Strip to the Rafah crossing continues. There has been no let-up in that, though the aid, UN says, is far less than what is required given the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding there due to the siege imposed by Israel. There's shortage of food, water, fuel is completely running out. Many hospitals are closing. People are dying in shelling. Schools have been destroyed. So all that is playing out, but some aid is going, and that's a small glimmer of hope.
As we speak, people in Gaza are dying. They are not only dying from bombs and strike. Soon, many more will die from the consequences of siege imposed on the Gaza Strip. Basic services are crumbling. Medicine is running out. Food and water are running out. The streets of Gaza have started overflowing with sewage. Gaza is on the brink of a massive health hazard as the risk of diseases are looming. I warn that we will not be able to continue our humanitarian operation if we do not get the fuel supply. My warning still stands.
Meanwhile, the war still poses a huge threat of spillover as Israel again hit targets in Syria, which it said it hit Iranian-backed militia in Syria. Meanwhile, the fight with Hezbollah also goes on intermittently, with Hezbollah firing at the Israeli defense forces and the Israeli forces reacting to that by firing back. With cameraman SP Dubey, this is Amritpal Singh on the West Bank border for DD India. Meanwhile, Israel has said that it's got no interest in waging a war with any other force, no other forces, except their only enemy at the moment, that's Hamas.
Our goal is to win the war and return the hostages. The maneuver will come, and the day it will happen is not far off. It will happen when the conditions are right in order to strike Hamas organization, and after we complete our task with fire, when this will happen, you will see and understand its power.
And as Israel gets closer to inches closer to a full-scale ground invasion of Gaza, let's look at what the ramifications of that would be. It's almost 3 weeks that the war has started, and Israel has been consistently saying our forces will go in and finish the Hamas, but they haven't done so far. Why is Israel not doing it? Why is it still pounding Hamas through mainly aerial bombing? There could be 3 reasons for it. One, it wants to weaken the Hamas infrastructure considerably before it goes in, and that can be achieved only by aerial bombing and artillery fire from the Israeli ground. The second and the most important reason weighing on Benjamin Netanyahu's government and his war cabinet's mind would be the fate of the hostages. According to Israeli admission, Hamas is still holding more than 220 hostages, many of them, actually more than half of them, foreign nationals. When sentiments are running high, are ruffled, Israel has to factor that in, that if they go in, what if Hamas starts killing the hostages one by one, which includes elderly, women, children, soldiers. When all those images beam on television screens, what effect would it have on the psychology or the psyche of the common Israeli who is already not only angry, traumatized, but hurt and calls for reprisal and retribution and does not want to see any more deaths? The third and the most important reason is that going in is easier said than done. When Israeli forces go in, what will they encounter? They will encounter a Hamas on the rooftops, blended in with the civilians, booby-trapped buildings, rubble, which is booby-trapped, tunnels, 1,300 tunnels with a 500-kilometer network, some of them opening both in Israel and in Egypt. Will Israeli forces be able to get in without considerable damage to themselves? That's a question that would be weighing on the mind of the IDF or the Israeli Defense Forces. With cameraman SP Dubey, this is Amrit Pal Singh for DD India in Jerusalem. So the Israelis haven't done a full-scale ground invasion, but it's not that they've not tried to go in. They did for last night, for the second consecutive day, target what is being called here a targeted or localized raid. Small column of troops did go in, backed by Air Force jets and UAVs, and tried to do in. They got in. They say they demolished some bases of the Hamas and got out quickly. But a full-scale invasion, which they've been talking, hasn't happened till now. We'll get to know when it happens. And Israel, as the Israel-Gaza conflict rages on, casualties keep rising on a daily basis. Mostly in the Gaza Strip, some in the West Bank. Israel's count stands at 1,400. Mainly the deaths that happened on October 7th, and a few days after that. More than 8,500 people have been killed so far in the last 21 days. The figure of the injured is way above 20,000, and the UN says about more than 1,000 could be buried under the rubble. Take a look.
My life, my heart, I love you. My heart, my heartbeat.
A heart-wrenching scene from Gaza. Palestinian lawyer Jihad Kafarna inscribes "My heart, my heartbeat" on his wife's shroud. He lost both his wife and 8-month-old stillborn child in an Israeli strike on Jabalia refugee camp. 3 surviving children, traumatized and injured, were rushed to the hospital where one of them narrated his ordeal.
We were sleeping when we were targeted. My mother and father, they were all there.
In a Gaza hospital, a pregnant woman miraculously gave birth to a baby girl shortly after being rescued from the rubble following an Israeli airstrike. Tragically, the mother passed away within an hour.
We are now next to an incubator. In it, there is a child. When her mother was pregnant, the building she was in got bombed. Unfortunately, she didn't survive. But thank Allah, she made it to the reception.
These blindfolded teddy bears on the streets of Tel Aviv symbolically represent missing children kidnapped by Hamas. It has been 3 weeks since these Israeli families have been anxiously waiting for their loved ones. Hamas has taken more than 200 people hostage after the attack. Pain and grief resemble also on the other side of the border. Buildings have fallen like house of cards, leaving thousands homeless. As Israelis and Gazans face the dual struggle of surviving airstrikes, people are securing essential supplies like food and water. The situation is dire, with critically low supplies of food, water, medicines, and fuel.
So it's a tragedy happening in the Gaza Strip. But as always, there are 2 sides to the story. One side we showed you in this report. We'll look at the other side. There are people who are being internally displaced in Israel as well, along the Gaza Strip border in Israel and also along the Lebanon border. I spoke to these internally displaced people as they are being housed in various other cities, big cities of Israel like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa, Beersheba. Look at this report. Even as the Hamas-Israel war wages on, the biggest cost is being paid by the people. As always in war, the humanitarian cost is the biggest cost. You can see these people. I am in Jerusalem right now, in a hotel in Jerusalem. People have been evacuated from villages across the borders, both with the Gaza Strip and also people with the Lebanon border in the north. Mostly old people, little children have been evacuated, and people have been put up in hotels where their municipalities, etc., are paying for it. And it is not easy to stay, to get displaced from their homes. Many of them tell me that their children, their young sons, their daughters are fighting right now in the army are there in the Israeli army, and mostly old people, little children, mothers who have been displaced, have been put up in these facilities by the government of Israel. And this is the situation in Israel. These people are from different villages along the borders with Lebanon and with the Gaza Strip. The situation in Gaza remains very, very tense, with about 6 lakh people being displaced already. These people come in and stay in these hotels in the evening. Generally, the local communities get together and organize some singing sessions to amuse these people, to entertain these people in these hard times. With cameraman SP Dubey, this is Amrit Pal Singh for DD India in Jerusalem. So Shubhendu, that's what the situation on the ground is. That's it from me for the moment. From Palestine, it's back to you in New Delhi. Shubhendu.
Thanks very much, Amrit, for those updates, and stay safe, you and your team, as you report from the conflict zone. Meanwhile, Russia has defended its decision to host a Hamas delegation in Moscow, an act that has raised objections from Israel. Moscow says it is essential to maintain communication with all parties involved in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Visiting Hamas officials also told Russian media that they viewed all hostages as Israelis, irrespective of additional passports they held, and that could not release any of them until the ceasefire. The United States has imposed sanctions against people and organizations linked to Hamas in an effort to cut off funding for the Palestinian terror group. These sanctions include targeting a Hamas official in Iran, members of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard, and the new sanctions highlight Iran's role in providing financial, logistical and operational support to Hamas. Amidst these developments, 193 members of the United Nations General Assembly are expected to vote on the Israel-Gaza war on Friday. But as an observer rather than a member, Palestine will not have a say. Palestinian Foreign Minister also addressed the UN Security Council at a special session this week, but as a non-member observer state. Nick Harper, DD India correspondent, joins us from Washington, D.C. with the latest. Nick, implications of US sanctions on Hamas, especially given the bigger parts in the picture now, including Iran and Russia.
Yeah, Shubhendu, this is the second round of sanctions that the US Treasury has imposed in the last few weeks on Hamas and Hamas officials. It's just interesting to run through the list of this, because this is a multi-country endeavour from the United States, targeting people in a whole range of different nations. So they say that they have imposed sanctions on a Jordanian national who lives in Tehran. They say that that man is a representative of Hamas in Iran. They also say that they're targeting Islamic Revolutionary Guard forces officials who train and assist Hamas militant groups and others within the region. Also an Iran-based commander and companies that are based in Spain, Sudan, and shareholders who are based in Turkey. The United States making it very clear with this that they are going after Hamas and anyone who is representing it or connected with it, irrespective of which country they are in. The United States also really working hard to try and ensure that this conflict does not spread further within the region. That's been something that the US President Joe Biden, his representatives as well, have been speaking about over the last few weeks, warning Iran not to carry out other strikes in other parts of the region, in particular looking towards the Iran-backed militia Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, who've been firing rockets into northern Israel, and also affiliated groups based in Syria. We know that overnight the US carried out airstrikes on a couple of locations in Syria, following a number of attacks on US servicemen based in Iraq and Syria during the last few weeks. They say that that was carried out with the help of Iran.
Nick, and
so
very briefly, if you can take us through
as they can across as many
what
countries.
is expected at the UNGA vote on the Gaza war.
Yeah, well, this UN General Assembly vote, it is the second day of the session. We've still got 100 countries to speak. We only heard from 13 yesterday. It's not off to a good start. They are starting late. After these 100 countries have spoken, we should get to a vote. But it's interesting to bear in mind that this is a non-binding vote. It would just be purely symbolic. And the resolution that they're voting on, they need a 2/3 majority, is calling for an immediate ceasefire, calling for allowing aid in, and calling for the universal condemnation of violence against any civilians, Israeli or Palestinian.
Nick, thanks very much for getting us those updates from Washington, D.C. And still to come on DD India Global. National Ballot of Cuba is celebrating its 75th anniversary. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Visitors enjoy spooky decorations, including more than 20,000 jack-o'-lanterns in Tivoli Gardens as Halloween descended on the center of the Danish capital. Visitors stopped to snap pictures of festive decorations on their mobiles. Halloween is celebrated on October 31st. And pop superstar Taylor Swift has launched the re-recorded version of the 1989 biggest album. Swift's new version of her 2014 blockbuster features her all-time hits such as Welcome to New York, Style, Black Space, Out of the Woods, Shake It Off, Bad Blood and Wildest Dreams. 5 unreleased songs from the Vault tracks have also been included in the album. And the National Ballot of Cuba is celebrating 75th anniversary with performances including a tribute to its late founder, Alicia Alonso. National Ballot of Cuba and its associated school have produced a number of dance stars who've made waves across the world. In sports, Indian athletes continue to excel at the ongoing 4th Asian Para Games. The event comes to a close. India is one step close to touching the 100-medal mark. India is currently at number 6 with 99 medals, including 25 gold, 29 silver, and 45 bronze. And that's all for this edition of DD India Global. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.com. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global. Namaskar.